All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into this research paper.
Okay.
And it's about a really interesting approach to teaching health and physical education in primary schools.
Interesting.
It focuses on a community collaboration model that's happening in Gippsland, Victoria, Australia.
Oh, yeah, Gippsland.
Mm-hmm.
I know it.
Yeah.
It's a rural area, and they've been using this thing called
Yeah.
School Centers for Teaching Excellence,
Okay.
or SCTEs.
SCTEs. Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to see how they're using these centers to connect universities and schools
That makes sense.
to provide, these rich learning experiences for pre-service teachers,
Right.
primary school kids and their teachers.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really promising approach,
Yeah. Yeah.
getting everyone involved and learning together.
Absolutely.
So I guess we should unpack, why they chose this model. How did they actually make it work in practice? What were some of the outcomes? And what is it about HPE that makes it so well suited to this type of collaboration?
Yeah. So I think a good place to start might be
Yeah.
with that need for change.
Yeah. Okay.
Australia was in the middle of some pretty major educational reform
Mm-hmm.
at the time, based on this thing called the Melbourne Declaration,
Right.
which, if you're familiar with Australian education,
I've heard of it.
you've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really pushed for equity and social justice in education,
Mm-hmm.
especially for students who are disadvantaged.
Okay.
And, Gippsland as a rural area definitely felt the impact of that.
So how did SCTEs address this need then?
Well, one of the things that happens a lot of times is that, you get all this reform happening
Mm-hmm.
at the policy level,
Right.
but it doesn't always translate well into, actual classroom changes.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that's kind of where SCTEs come in.
Okay.
They're designed to try to close that gap between,
Yeah.
the theory and what actually happens in schools.
Yeah, the rubber hits the road. So how did they put this into practice?
Okay, so the paper focuses on two main initiatives.
Okay.
One is swimming and water safety lessons,
Okay.
and the other is something called the Friday Sports Program.
Oh, cool.
And you can imagine like these university students
Yeah.
working side by side with the primary school kids,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them swimming, teaching them sports.
Right. So it's very hands-on.
Very hands-on, very practical.
That sounds fantastic, but I'm also wondering, how did they actually ensure that it was a quality learning experience?
That's a really good point
Yeah.
because, it could very easily just descend into chaos.
Right. It could just be a free-for-all.
Right, exactly. And that's where the planning comes in.
Okay.
So these pre-service teachers, they had to plan their lessons in detail. They got feedback. They had to practice. They were using online platforms to coordinate everything.
Okay, so it was
Yeah,
very
it
structured.
wasn't just rocking up and kind of like winging it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you want to make sure that it's a good experience for everyone.
Exactly. And the thing is, it wasn't just about the kids, learning to swim or play sports.
Right.
The pre-service teachers
Yeah.
were also getting this incredibly valuable
Mm-hmm.
hands-on experience in teaching.
Yeah. I can imagine that.
You know,
That's great for them.
they had to learn how to adjust
Yeah.
to, different students' needs and situations,
Right.
things that you can't get from a textbook.
No, exactly. You got to be in the classroom to really
You got to be in the thick of it. Yeah.
learn those skills.
And the paper actually mentions this one teacher
Oh, really?
whose kids loved the swimming program so much
Wow.
that they rearranged their whole timetable to accommodate it.
Really?
Yeah.
So they were that excited about it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, did they collect any data on how well the program was received?
They did, actually.
The student satisfaction ratings for the university courses
Yeah.
that you're involved
Mm-hmm.
were significantly higher
Wow.
compared to previous years.
So it sounds like everyone wins in this scenario.
Yeah.
You've got the primary school students who are engaged, they're learning new things.
Right.
The teachers have some extra support in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And the pre-service teachers are getting this valuable real-world experience.
It's a model with a lot of potential.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess that leads to the next question, which is,
Sure.
what is it about HPE specifically
Yeah.
that makes it such a good fit for this kind of community collaboration?
I would imagine that, the joy of movement and play
Yeah,
makes it easier for kids to get excited about learning.
absolutely.
But it seems like there's got to be more to it than that, right?
You're right. It's not just fun and games.
Okay.
HPE is really about,
Yeah.
promoting something called health literacy.
Health literacy.
Yeah, which is basically,
I like that term.
so it's helping kids to understand how to
Okay.
make informed decisions.
Yeah.
about their health.
Right. So it's like equipping them
Exactly.
with the knowledge and the skills
Yeah.
to live healthier lives.
Exactly. And this is especially crucial,
Yeah.
in today's world where we're seeing things like
Right.
childhood obesity
Yeah.
and, more sedentary lifestyles.
And that ties into, I think, what you were saying about the health promoting schools model,
Yeah.
which is about taking that holistic approach
Exactly.
that goes beyond just the classroom.
And I think SETEs really embody that,
Okay.
by bringing the community into the learning process.
It sounds like a really promising approach, but I also imagine there are some challenges involved
Oh, yeah.
in implementing something like this.
Definitely.
Did the researchers touch on any of those?
They did. And, they actually cautioned
Mm-hmm.
against
Okay.
viewing these early successes with rose-colored glasses. They said, look, there are some significant hurdles to overcome, especially when it comes to keeping these programs running.
Right. Sustainability is always
Sustainability, yeah.
a big issue.
So what kind of hurdles are we talking about?
Yeah. What were some of the main challenges they encountered?
Well, one of the biggest ones, and this is no surprise,
Yeah.
was funding.
Right. Okay.
The paper mentions a lack of financial support
Yeah.
for these initiatives, even though they had,
Despite the benefits.
despite the benefits, yeah.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, but I guess not surprising.
No.
Were there other challenges aside from funding?
Yeah, bureaucracy was another big one.
Okay.
They had all these
Red tape.
hurdles to jump through.
Yeah.
And they even mentioned this anecdote about a
Wow.
lecturer who was running the swimming program
Mm-hmm.
needed a specific certification to teach,
Okay.
even though he had years of teaching experience.
Wow. So he had to go back and
He had to go back and get certified,
get this extra qualification.
which was a huge
Wow.
time-consuming and costly process.
Yeah. It seems like even with the enthusiasm and the proven benefits,
Yeah.
these programs are still butting up against the
Yeah.
realities of funding and red tape.
Sadly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it highlights that tension
Oh, yeah.
between, the ideals of what education could be
Yeah.
and what limited resources often allow for.
Yeah. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not always easy to translate those great ideas into practice,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with those constraints.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we'll continue to explore
Okay.
as we delve deeper into this research.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's a familiar story, unfortunately. But, despite these challenges, I think the Gippsland SEPE model offers a really compelling example of community collaboration in action.
Yeah, it does.
It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
It takes commitment and ongoing work.
It makes you wonder, though, how did they manage to achieve those successes with such limited resources?
Right.
What can we learn from their approach?
Well, I think one of the things that really stands out
Mm.
is their resourcefulness.
Okay.
Remember how they partnered with that local leisure center for facilities?
Yeah.
They also tapped into the expertise of groups like the Australian Swimming Coaches and Teachers Association,
Right.
Life Saving Victoria,
Oh.
to help train the pre-service teachers.
So they were really good at maximizing those partnerships
Exactly.
and leveraging the existing strengths and resources within the community.
They recognized that, they couldn't do everything themselves.
Right.
But by working with others,
Yeah.
they were able to achieve more.
Less.
More with less, exactly.
And of course, the university was a key partner as well,
Absolutely.
bringing their research expertise to the table,
Yeah.
along with their commitment to teacher education.
Yeah. And they were able to give those pre-service teachers,
Yeah.
the pedagogical knowledge and the
Huh.
support that they needed
Mm.
to be successful.
The paper also mentions the importance of involving parents and community volunteers.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah.
they were really invested in creating that sense of community ownership
Yeah.
around these programs.
Absolutely. And, there's even an anecdote
Oh, really?
about parents just showing up
Wow.
to the swimming lesson
Just to watch.
just to watch, to show their support.
Wow, that's incredible.
That sends a powerful message
It does.
to those kids
Yeah.
that their learning is valued by the community.
That makes me think about the broader impact of these programs, too.
Mhm.
It's not just about, teaching kids to swim or play sports. It's
Yeah.
about fostering that sense of belonging
Yeah.
and shared responsibility for
These- they're-
education.
You can have these ripple effects
Yeah.
that extend far beyond the immediate participants.
Yeah. Which I think brings us to a really crucial point,
Yeah.
and that is sustainability.
Okay.
How do we make sure
Right.
that these types of initiatives can continue to thrive over the long term
million-dollar question.
It is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
We've talked about funding
Hmm.
and bureaucratic hurdles.
Yeah.
But are there other ways to address these challenges?
Well, I think one idea is
Yeah.
to explore alternative funding models.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe there are philanthropic organizations or
Yeah.
private businesses who would be interested in supporting this kind of work.
What about crowdfunding?
Oh,
Could that be an option?
that's an interesting thought.
It seems like there's a lot of public support
Yeah.
for this type of community-based education.
Yeah. And of course, we can't forget
Mm.
the role of government funding as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
we need to advocate for policies that
Yeah.
prioritize these kinds of initiatives.
And speaking of advocacy, I'm curious about those pre-service teachers.
Mm-hmm.
The paper mentioned how much they benefited
Yeah.
from those real-world experiences.
There were some really compelling quotes
Oh, yeah.
from their evaluations.
Okay.
They talked about
Yeah.
how valuable it was
Yeah.
to have that hands-on learning
Right.
and to work directly with children.
Yeah, I bet.
One
Yeah.
of them even said that they felt more confident
Wow.
in their ability to actually teach HPE
That's great.
after going through this program.
So it's not only beneficial for the primary school students, but also for those future generations of HPE teachers.
Exactly. And that's something that we really need to
Yeah.
highlight when we're advocating for these kinds of programs.
It's an investment
And in the future.
in the future of education. Yeah.
So it sounds like the SETE model
Yeah.
has a lot of potential
Mm.
to improve HPE education.
Definitely.
But I'm also wondering,
Yeah.
could this model be adapted
Right.
and applied to other subject areas?
That's a great question. And it's
Yeah.
something that the researchers actually encourage us to think about. What would it look like to create these kinds of partnerships in,
Right.
Math or science or the arts?
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is. It's really exciting. But I think we also need to acknowledge that implementing these kinds of changes,
Right.
it's not without its challenges.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you try to shake things up,
There's going to be pushback.
there's going to be people who were resistant to change.
Yeah. Or who feel threatened
Right.
by these new ways of doing things.
And that's where,
Yeah.
strong leadership comes in.
Right. You need people who are willing to
Yeah.
champion these initiatives and
Right.
create that culture of collaboration.
Yeah. And communication is key, too.
Yeah.
We need to be clear about the goals and the benefits.
Yeah.
And, address any concerns
Yeah.
that people might have.
Build that trust and understanding.
Exactly. And it's also important to recognize that context matters.
Of course.
What works in Gippsland
Yeah.
might not work in a different community.
You got to be flexible and adaptable.
Right. We need to find ways to tailor
Yeah.
these
But don't
models
say the needs.
to fit the needs of each unique situation.
I'm also thinking about the role of technology
Oh, yeah.
in scaling up these types of programs. The paper mentioned
Yeah.
the use of online platforms
Right.
for communication and coordination.
So could we use technology?
Yeah, could we use it to create
Yeah.
virtual learning communities
Mhm.
or even just online resources that
Yeah.
could support SCTE programs?
That's definitely worth exploring.
Yeah.
Technology can help us to overcome those geographical barriers
Right.
and make it easier for schools and universities to collaborate,
Even if they're not
even if they're not in the same place.
in the same location.
Exactly.
It could also help reduce costs
Yeah.
and make these programs more accessible
Right.
to communities with limited resources.
Absolutely.
This is all very promising.
Yeah.
But I want to circle back to that sustainability question.
Okay.
What are some concrete steps that we can take
Right.
to ensure these programs can thrive over the long term?
Well, funding is obviously a big one. We need to find ways to secure ongoing financial support.
Right. Whether it's from
Whether it's from
government sources or
Yeah.
private foundations.
But what else can we do beyond funding?
Well, I think we also need to build capacity
Yeah.
within schools and communities.
Hmm.
So that means,
Yeah.
providing professional development opportunities
Right. For teachers.
for teachers, for administrators,
Hmm.
and just fostering that culture that
Yeah.
values collaboration and innovation.
It also means engaging parents
Yes.
and community members,
Yeah.
helping them to understand the
Yeah.
importance of these programs.
We need everyone to be on board
If
if we want to see lasting change.
It's about creating that shared vision
Yeah.
for the future of education.
And that vision should be grounded in the principles of
Yeah.
equity, excellence, and community engagement.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think we also need to remember the importance of data collection and evaluation.
They need to track the impact.
Track the impact of this and be able to demonstrate their effectiveness.
Right, both to secure funding and to
make improvements,
identify areas for improvement.
Yeah, we got to constantly be learning and evolving.
So I think this research paper is a really valuable contribution to the field of HPE.
It is.
And it offers a lot of important insights for anyone who's interested in promoting those collaborative and community-engaged approaches.
It's a reminder that, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
There are already successful models out there
that
we can learn from and adapt.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's really inspiring to see how they took this idea and, made it a reality over in Gippsland.
It really is, and it all comes back to those key ingredients we've been talking about.
Right.
Collaboration, innovation, and a deep commitment to the community.
One thing that really struck me about this model was how it empowers the pre-service teachers.
Okay.
It's not just about observing or assisting.
Right.
They're actually leading these programs and making real decisions that impact the students' learning.
Yeah, it's one thing to learn about teaching in a university classroom.
Yeah.
But it's totally different.
Totally.
To be out there in the field, working with kids, facing those real-world challenges.
Yeah, and I imagine it also helps them to develop a stronger sense of ownership and responsibility for their teaching.
Yeah, they're not just following a curriculum.
Right.
They're actively creating and shaping the learning experience.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the long-term implications of this model.
Okay.
What kind of impact could these early experiences have on pre-service teachers as they move into their careers?
Well, I think it has the potential to really shape their entire approach to teaching.
Yeah.
They're learning firsthand the power of collaboration, the importance of community engagement, the value of hands-on experiential learning.
Do you think it might even influence the types of schools or communities
That's a good question.
they choose to work in?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
They might be more likely
Okay.
to seek out positions in schools that prioritize those things.
Right. That align with their values.
It would be really interesting to track these pre-service teachers over time and see how their experiences in the SCTE program influence their career trajectory.
Yeah, and their impact on the field.
And their impact,
This research is really compelling.
Yeah.
But it also raises a lot of questions about how we can translate these findings into broader systemic change.
You're absolutely right.
What are some of the key challenges we might face in trying to scale up this model?
Well, funding's always a major hurdle.
Yeah, right.
As we discussed, these programs require resources to support the training, the transportation, the equipment.
All the logistics.
All the logistics, yeah. Beyond funding,
Yeah.
are there other systemic barriers?
I think there can be resistance to change within educational institutions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It can be difficult to shift
Right.
those entrenched mindsets and practices.
Even when there's evidence.
Even when there's evidence, yeah.
To support the new approach.
Right. It requires a willingness to experiment.
To take risks, to embrace new ways of thinking.
Yeah. And that's where I think strong leadership is essential.
Absolutely.
We need administrators and policymakers who are willing to champion these models.
And to create that supportive environment.
And it also requires buy-in from teachers.
Yes.
They need to be on board
Yeah.
with this collaborative approach.
And that's where professional development is so crucial.
Right. You need to give them the training and the support.
It sounds like a lot needs to align.
It does. It's a complex undertaking.
It is. But I think the potential benefits are significant enough to warrant the effort.
If we can make it work.
If we can make it work.
It could have a really transformative impact.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to leave with today?
I think the most important message is that collaboration is key.
Collaboration is key.
We can achieve so much more when we work together.
Yeah, when we break down those silos.
Exactly. Schools, universities, communities, families.
And this research shows us it's not just a feel-good idea.
Right.
It can lead to real, tangible improvements in students' learning and well-being.
And it's not just about HPE.
Right. Great.
This approach can be applied
To any subject.
to any subject. Yeah.
It's about fostering that love of learning, a sense of community,
Yeah.
and a belief in the power of collective action.
Well said.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive
Yes.
into the world of SCTEs.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today and sharing your insights.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope this episode has inspired you
Yeah.
to think about how you can promote collaboration and innovation in your own communities.
Absolutely.
Remember, even small steps
Yeah.
can make a big difference.
They can.
Until next time.
See you later.
Yeah.